Myers in the early 60s.
I remember.
And he went to Boston College and the San Diego Chargers. So Gordy and I, we shared duties. And I told Eddie Perminsky, who was the head coach at that time, that I can't kick off because of the brain injury.
Right.
And he said, okay. So Gordy kicked off, and we shared duties on field goals and extra points. And I did good. I did kick a lot of field goals, kicked a lot of extra points. And then they folded because the World Football League came in, and the Seaboard Football League basically went under because all the players
off.
Right, they were siphoning the players off. And back then, the Seaboard Football League and not the World Football League, but the Seaboard Football League was kind of, they sent players to the NFL back and forth all the time. Okay, and at that point in time, I had no idea there were two teams that were watching. So the Seaboard Football League, they folded. I decided to finish up at King's and play club football at King's College. If you know what club football is, it's not sanctioned by the NCAA. It's just a club within the school that happens to play football.
That was
like a chess club.
Popular for that time frame.
Right, that's exactly right. I had a great year.
Yeah.
I had a fabulous year. Kicked a lot of field goals, extra points. By that time, I had gotten my clearances, and I was able to kick off. Okay, and I think that was the impetus that made me go a little further. Okay, because my kickoffs were always 5, 6, 7 yards deep in the end zone, and so the season ended, and during that period of time, I was writing letters to all the NFL teams in the northeast part of the country, and I made a lot of phone calls. Okay, and heard nothing. Then I guess it was early spring, mid-spring, I get contacted by the Philadelphia Eagles. They said, we've been looking at you, we want to see what you got. So, okay. I said, why not? That was my goal.
The door called it a look-see, right? They want to have you in for a look-see, right?
They want a look-see, right. We want you to come, we want to look at you to see what you got. A look-see. So anyway, I got excited. I mean, I was in the best kicking shape of my life.
What'd you tell your dad? What did he say?
He said, are you kidding me? He goes, no. I said, Dad, it's the truth. I said, they invited me down. So they allowed my dad and my best friend at that time, who later became my best man, to attend. And I didn't know what to expect. And it was down at Veterans Stadium.
Just the three of you went down?
Just the three of us. I didn't know who was going to be there.
You didn't know if there was going to be 10 kickers there, or just you, or...
They didn't tell us a word. They didn't, just me, or just another kicker, or 10 kickers, or whatever the case may be. It was, I got the invite, so we got down to Veterans Stadium. We pulled up to the Eagles offices, and someone greeted us, and took us to the locker room. And there was another guy dressing in there in Eagle uniform. Just the practice jersey, green shorts. I thought maybe he was one of the players going in for a workout, you know? And Coach McCormick comes out. Mike McCormick was the head coach at that particular time. He comes out and he introduces himself to me. I introduced myself to him. He brought the other guy over. He introduced the other guy to me. He said, I says, where's everybody else? He goes, it's just you two. I got, wow.
Yeah.
But before that, they walked me up to the locker room, and there was an Eagle jersey waiting for me. Eagle shorts, socks, the whole ball of wax, you know?
Yeah.
And I looked at my dad, and he looked at me, and I just shrugged my shoulders. What's
Yeah.
going on, you know?
Yeah.
So,
pretty surreal.
Yeah, it was. To be honest with you. So I developed a way to snap focus. Just shut up and don't bother me. And I do a lot of visualization at that time, going through my technique and my steps and all that kind of stuff. And he said, well, it's time. McCormick comes on, it's time to go on the field. So I walk on the field through the tunnel, and I'm standing on the carpet at the vet, and I look up and I said, I'm here.
Yeah.
And my father says, you are here, but you're not there yet.
Yeah.
And he goes,
you're still attached at hand.
He goes, get focused. I says, Dad, I know.
Yeah.
He says, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. So we were warming up, and all the coaches were out there, along with the general manager. My father was out there, along with my best man, Joe Rosencrantz. We were out there, and I was kicking into the net in extra points. and I was trying to bait my opponent.
See, size them up.
Size them up. Because it's a mind game. When you're going on a one-on-one with somebody, it's a mind game.
Yeah.
So I was kicking into net, and so was he. I didn't know what his capability was. But he was one of the top, 2 years prior to that, he was one of the top kickers in the collegiate world. All right, and he played 2 years in the World Football League prior to coming there for the tryout.
So he had a resume.
Yeah, he had a resume, and I had a year and a half of high school football, an on and off alternating season in semi-pro,
right,
and 1 year of club football. I says, well, I knew my abilities. I was confident. So, and I always had a philosophy, always go first. But you have to be confident to do that.
Yeah.
If you're going to go first, you better be right on the target. So Coach McCormick says, who's going first? And I raised my hand and said, I'll go first.
At the same time.
The words didn't even come out of his mouth. I said, I'll go first. He said, oh, okay, He looked over to the other guy. He said, yeah, let him go. So, snap, hold. I didn't kick it into the net. I kicked it over the net into the seats. And all the coaches looked at me. I looked at my opponent, made eye contact with him for about 2 or 3 seconds. He looked away. Naturally, he had to look away because he was up.
Right.
All right? He kicked into the net. So I kicked again, over the net. I think there were 4 extra points. Each extra point went over the net. After he stopped looking at me at the 4th or the 5th time, I knew I was in his head. I was in his head. He said, where did this guy come from?
Yeah, probably, right.
Yeah.
So that was the start of it then. Yeah.
We started moving back to the 30. I kicked it over the net at the 30. Started moving back at the 40. At the 40, I hit the top of the net. And my range at that particular time was around 60 yards with good height.
Yeah.
Coming off. See, when I came out of high school, I got rid of the kicking block because in the pros, they don't use the kicking block. They kick right off the ground. I thought my advantage was I started using the block 2 years prior to anyone else.
Right.
Anyone else, okay? So kicking off the ground and kicking off the block are 2 completely different things, okay? So I think we went back maybe to 55 yards, and I was kicking them through. And then we did kickoffs. I was putting them 5, 6, 7, 8 yards deep into the end zone.
Turning some heads at that point.
I was turning heads. Because I knew I had the capability of doing it. So at the end of the tryout, the coaches started talking to the general manager, so on and so forth. And Coach McCormick came up to me and my opponent, and he said to the other guy, he says, why don't you go in the locker room, let me talk to Kim first, and I'll be right with you. I figured this was a big blow-off.
Yeah.
Because he was going to talk to me and say, listen, we're going to go with the other guy.
Great job,
Yeah, that type of thing. So we were talking. He was asking me all kinds of questions. And then we started walking through the tunnel back to the locker room, and he stopped. My father was on one side of him. Joe was on the other side of him, and the 3 of them were facing me. And Mike said to me, Mike McCormick says, well, we want you to come to camp and compete against our first-team kicker for the first-team job.
Wow. Right then and there. From
that tryout.
You had earned the opportunity to
to
go
camp. Because the camp was coming up soon. Because they wanted me to come to the mini camp, okay? And then from the mini, with their draft choices and their free agents. And then from the mini camp, we were going to go into the camp in July. Because this was right around the May time frame, mid-May, I want to say. And
the kicker at that time was Horst Muhlman, who was an all-pro for Cincinnati.
That's right.
And they were paying him a lot of money. And that year, I don't know how he performed, but he might have played a year or 2 after that. But
his last year was 77.
So they were. If he wasn't going to earn that money, it was a good opportunity for someone.
Well, I didn't know what the minimum salary was. I think it was around $50K, but they were paying him a lot of money.
Right.
And let me tell you something. Money talks, and if you're not performing, they're going to replace you. And they'd pick up another guy.
Right.
I'd take the minimum of a 50. to play
Sure.
in the NFL. So, and
So,
any,
so you got the invite, and then the questions came and revealed kind of an obscure rule that
it was an obscure rule, and that rule got overturned in 1990. It was deemed unconstitutional.
the rule was
The
that
rule
if
was
you didn't
this.
graduate.
Right.
On time.
I had to take my last semester off of college. There was an illness at home. My parents needed help. So I took the last semester off of college, and I was going to go in the summer and in the fall to finish up my degree. And the question came, he goes, "You are finishing up in May, aren't you?" I says, "Well, no," and I explained to him. He says, "King, we can't sign it."
They would have had to wait a year after.
At that time, you had to wait, if you didn't graduate, you had to wait a year past your graduating class in college,
Which would have been 1976.
which was 1976.
So that removed all opportunity to compete for a job in 1975.
In 1975, that's exactly
But you
right.
still stayed on the radar screen, and tell us about the.
So in 1970, the other team that was interested in me was the Giants. And the coach that came in was Arnsparger from Miami in 76. He invited me down for a tryout. It was me and another guy from Albany. It was up right outside of New York City. And went to the tryout, and we must have kicked 150 balls. And after he kicked right around that many balls, he wanted to see onside kicks. And at that particular time, I popped something in my leg, in my hip. And I had to use my hip to pick my leg up to walk. And every time I kicked, the pain was horrendous. And I can see that I was starting to slip. And when Arnsparger said, "I want to see onside kicks," I raised my hand and says, "Coach, I'm done." And this is exactly what I told him. I'm not a piece of meat. I said, "You can see how I'm walking. You can see how I'm kicking. And you still want me to kick?" I said, "You're the guy I don't want to play for." And I turned around and I walked off the field. And I limped. Well, I limped.
Yeah.
In fact, I was on crutches when I got home. I was on crutches for a while. And that was that. So
now Mike McCormick, that was actually that would have been his last year.
Mike McCormick got fired.
You couldn't have known that beforehand.
No, Mike McCormick, they went 4-10. He got fired, right?
Dick Vermeil
because
takes over.
McCormick said he was going to call me back in
Right.
76.
He wasn't there in 76.
He wasn't there in 76.
Another twist, right?
Right, he wasn't there in 76.
Yeah.
So that was that. So
Coach-
Vermeil got hired in 75, February of 75. All right? I didn't hear from him. So, comes close to 77. I get a letter, and they invite me to their free agent and draft choices camp, mini camp, in 1977, down at JFK. I was one of maybe 3 kickers or 4 kickers down there, and they were going to pick one out of 3 of us to compete with Horst Muhlman for the job in 77. And I was clearly the best of the bunch going to be invited, but there was going to be another evaluation after that. And Ron Jaworski was holding, and Denny Green was centering. And the whole Eagle team was there.
Yeah.
With the draft choices and the free agents. And Jaworski looks up at me and says, "Where did you come from?" And I looked at him, I said, "Wyoming Area High School." And I turned around and I walked away. And then later he came up to me and goes, "What do you mean you came from Wyoming Area High School?"
That's where I played. Yeah.
So I told him a story.
Yeah.
I told him the story I
Yeah.
just told you. He says, "Are you kidding me?" He says, "Is that how you got here?" I said, "Yes, sir. That's how I got here." He goes, "That's something." He goes, and so there was a 6-week lag period between the next evaluation and that time frame there.
Yeah.
And during that time frame, I hurt myself. I pulled a muscle. And when I went down for the second evaluation, I did okay, but I wasn't dominating like I did. I wasn't as strong, and I didn't get the invitation. But that's the year Horst Muhlman got fired.
Yeah, he got fired.
He was 1 or 3. He was 3 out of 9 from 30 to 39
I
yards.
saw that. I saw the stats. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been the year to replace him.
But anyway, they brought a guy in from Texas Abilene to replace Ullman after Ullman got fired in November. No, it was
Ove Johansson.
Ove, huh?
Ove Johansson.
Anyway,
Yeah.
he kicked 25%.
Yeah.
He kicked 25%.
So he was almost worse.
So anyway,
so it would have been, if everything could have worked out, you could have.
well, after
no
that,
doubt
after the
could have
first,
had it.
after in '75, when we were walking out of the locker room, I turned to my father and Joe and I said to them, "I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
After this, it's done. It's like reading newspapers, old newspaper
It's time to move
clippings.
on.
It's time to move on."
Yeah.
You know, he said, "If they had, if I get invited next year, I'll be back next year." But I felt in '75 that I might have had a shot.
You were at the top of your game.
I was at the top of my game. And in '77, if I didn't hurt myself, Mulman had a lousy year.
You did.
Now, who's to say that I wouldn't have a lousy year?
Right.
But at '77, in 1977, I
You
was
were
still.
younger. You were closer to your.
I was
your
still.
peak.
You're right.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
still
He
popping.
was on the downside of my career. Yeah, so.
But hey, listen, an obscure rule
Yeah.
kept me from signing in 2 injuries, in 2 you can call private tryouts.
Right. Still some amazing opportunities, and even though you said it stays here, obviously a proud father told my father, because my father would say, "Oh, Kim had some pro tryouts."
Let me tell you something. When I came home, I didn't say a word for 46 years to anyone about it.
How long do I know you?
That's
I
right.
had heard, I just heard from my father, "Oh, hey, Kim had some pro tryouts," but I was only an 8-year-old when I heard that. And I never knew how close it really came and about the obscure rule thing. So, pretty amazing.
Well, let me tell you. I told that story to my buddy Ralph Zessa. He says, "Kim, did you ever tell that story before?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Kim, it's unbelievable." He says, "You got to get it out there."
Yeah.
And I hemmed and I hawed about it.
Right.
And that's when I called you.
But like you said, a big part of telling the story is just motivation for young athletes of what they can do if they really apply themselves. And not only that, but just to, you had a pretty significant injury, to refocus and set another goal, and the determination it takes to do that. And it's a good story for young athletes to realize that, hey, it's not always a bed of roses. You're going to face some adversity in life at some point, and how you handle that and how you challenge yourself to move on to another goal is a big part of life.
Let me say this. It doesn't have to be sports, really. It could be the humanities. It could be any facet of life.
Right.
If you set the goal high enough, okay, and you really want to get there, you'll work to that goal to get there. All right. It all depends on what you really want to do. And I've read books about goals all my life. It's not so much hitting that goal, it's the journey to that goal that actually makes the person you are.
Taking action every day, which you did with your tryouts, making phone calls, writing letters. That was all part of the equation. You do any one less thing out of that equation of things, you may not get that
It's staying focused. It's staying focused on what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a lawyer? What do you want to do in life? So you stay focused on that goal.
Right.
Do you want to be a musician? You stay focused on that goal. And you work to that goal to get it. It doesn't have to be football,
Right.
basketball, baseball. It could be anything.
And I think our kids need to hear that message, especially in this day and age when a lot of things are more difficult for them.
If you climb that mountain, all right, you're going to find another mountain. There's always going to be adversity. There's always going to be competition. And remember this, there's always somebody better.
Sure.
There's always somebody better. You better be prepared, right? Who knew that my opponent back in '75, he thought he had it,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right?
So he faced that person better than him.
That's exactly right.
And then he didn't get that opportunity. So if somebody lesser had tried out against him that day, he might have been the Eagles kicker for 5 years. So
That's exactly right.
But,
That's exactly right.
amazing story, and you're an inspiration to me, even more so now that I know all the details. And I'm proud of you. And it's just great to great to hear, and finally make all the connections. And I don't know how much of my dad, I don't know how much he knew, but if he was still here, I'd be testing his memory.
Well,
Did he
you know,
all
if
these
we
details?
had just one more minute, I want to say
Yeah.
this.
We have
One
a
more
couple
minute.
minutes, yeah.
After I graduated high school, okay, and because I had nowhere to play ball, and I knew I wanted to go to the NFL, okay, I was going to Luzerne County Community College, and working for my father at the bar at home, and I was frustrated. As a matter of fact, I was acting like a big baby, and my father would take me out kicking, and one time he just picked up and he left. He took the footballs and left. I said, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm leaving." He goes, "You're not listening." You know how the old saying, familiarity breeds contempt?
Oh yeah.
He goes, "You're not listening." Because he's the one that really taught me how to kick off the ground. So I go home. The next day comes. He goes, "Get in the car." I said, "What do you mean get in the car?" I was 20 years old, I think, at the time. He says, "Get in the car." "Where are we going?" He says, "Just get in the car." I thought he was taking me to some doctor.
Yeah.
Right? I said, "Are you taking me to some shrink?" I said, I'm not going to no head doctor, Dad.
Yeah.
He goes, "No, just get in the car, will you?" He goes, "I'm not going to tell you one more time." So I got in the car and we drove to Pittston, Main Street, Pittston. And he pulls us in front of a bar in Pittston. And he walks in the bar. I said, "Dad, where you going? We got a bar at home."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Just follow me." So I walk in the bar with him, and out from behind, from the back comes this big guy, and it happens to be Lou Michaels. At that time, Baltimore Colts,
Hall of Fame, right?
Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
golden toe of football.
Wow.
Not only did he kick, but he was a defensive tackle.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
He made his
Great
mark
player.
by putting an X on the field where he wanted the ball placed. All right, when he kicked the field goal. So he walks up, and my father says, "Lou, how you doing? It's been a long time." And Lou Michaels goes to my father. My father's name was Lou. He says, "Lou, I'm doing well." He goes, "So, this is my boy." And Lou Michaels looks at me and he goes, "I heard a lot about you. I read a lot about you. But I also heard you're a big baby." And I went like this. He goes,
You were taken aback, yeah. Right?
"Your dad and I talk." He goes, "And you're not listening to him." He goes, "You're going to come out with me." So I spent about 3 sessions with him. And he taught me a lot. And I couldn't be more grateful to him. The point is, I set a goal for myself. I didn't stop. I kept going. I kind of stopped in 78.
Yeah.
I figured it was up. It was done.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
time
over.
to other things. Yes.
Call a spade a spade.
Hadn't even met your wife at that point.
That's
right.
right. 2 years later, I met my wife. I went to work in Washington, D.C. Cleveland invited me out, and I hemmed and I hawed about going. So I didn't really decide until that Friday afternoon. I jumped in my car, drove out to Alexandria, put a bag together, drove out to Cleveland, and tried out. Didn't work out, but I gave it a shot. But a funny story. Buck Buchanan was standing
Another
7
Hall of Famer, I think.
The other Hall defensive tackle from the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a coach there. He was standing 7 yards in front of me. The ball was snapped from me. He put his hands up. He goes, "Don't hit me," he says, "because you won't leave the stadium alive." I says, "If this ball hits you," I says, "you ain't leaving alive." And everybody got a laugh out of it.
Yeah.
Everybody got a laugh out of it. And I didn't hit. He didn't budge.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't budge. I mean, that ball went
Yeah.
over his hands. He didn't budge. And another crazy story, and I'll finish it with this. This is how serious I was. I remember when the Baltimore Colts were scrimmaging the Washington Redskins. I went to that scrimmage with my best man, and after the scrimmage, I hopped the fence, ran onto the field. Ted Marchibroda was the head coach of the Baltimore Colts at that time. And I walked up to him, and he walked up to me, shook my hand. He thought maybe I was a press guy or something. And I said to him, "Coach," I says, "you got to see me kick. I'm asking you for a tryout." And he bust out laughing. He goes, I said, "No, seriously, you got to see me kick, Coach."
Yeah.
He goes, give your name to that guy over there," and he left. I never heard from him, but that's what you got to do. You have to knock on doors.
So you had some moxie.
Yeah.
To do that, right?
You got to knock on doors. You got to keep opening the doors.
Yeah.
All the letters I wrote, phone calls I made, it worked out pretty well.
Some great experiences, some great stories, and then successful career after that. beautiful family.
Yes.
Wife Carol, daughter Lindsay, and now you have 2 apples of your eyes. Your grandsons, Michael and Anthony.
Michael and Anthony.
And you said your son-in-law.
My son-in-law,
great guy.
Lenny, great guy. He's a super father. He's a great husband, super husband.
So you have La Familia, right?
La Familia.
And that's everything. Right? So
that's all I ask for.
So just I want to thank you for taking the time. I hope we got it down. I'm going to check right now, but just some great stories, and to me, like you said, the overarching thing, you just want this to be motivational to the kids, and I know you impressed that upon me several times. I want this to be so the kids could realize, what their opportunities in life is, and you hit several themes. Be focused, always keep striving. Yeah, you're going to climb a mountain. There's going to be another mountain. There's always somebody better than you. But if you become the best person you can be, if you get the best out of your abilities, you can lead a successful life. You can be happy.
Listen, you make it what you want to make it. No one's going to remember you for spending 8 hours behind a desk all day. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what I wanted to do, I worked 10 hours, 12 hours a day behind a desk. That's why it took me so long to come back to the program. I was working 10 to 12 hours a day.
Making a career,
yeah. And that was that.
Great interview. In closing, I just want to thank you for everything you do for the program, and
thank you.
Your mentorship, your leadership, and just some great stories. Every time I talk to you, I learn something, and now that my dad's not here anymore, it's just good to talk to people that knew of him, and keep that family connections. We are related by blood. I look at you, I see my Uncle Sam, I see my Uncle Nick, I see my dad. So it's been wonderful connecting here through this program, and this is a great program to do it in.
Every Christmas, Sammy would come to our house in the morning. Your uncle, he'd give me a quarter or a 50-cent piece.
Oh yeah.
He'd give my brother a 50-cent piece,
yeah.
and he'd sit down, he'd talk to the family, and it was over coffee, and he would go visit everybody. Sammy would go visit everybody.
He was the oldest. I had great aunts and uncles, and just a wonderful family to grow up in, just like you did as well. And to just see that many years later, when you're a kid and you don't know anything, you think everybody has that, but they don't.
Well,
and you wish they did,
because
there's so many benefits.
It was
of growing up in
a close family. It was a
family
close family. It was. All the uncles kept it close, and all the cousins kept it close.
They still do.
They still do.
So I just want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day weekend. This is a first of our series. We'll be doing more of these, and I just want to put it down. We want to put it down on film. Some of the great stories that our warriors have had, and the experiences they've had, and I'm just honored that you were the first. You'll always be the first.
Well, let me tell you.
There'll be many more after
this.
You were the first.
I didn't tell that story for 46 years. No one knew. I figured, why not?
Yeah. We got it out there now, and I think a lot of people will be interested to see that. So we'll be putting this up probably Sunday morning, maybe before that. Just want to thank you all for checking in with us, and wish you the best, great summer, and we'll see you on the next Warrior Story. Any closing thoughts?
All I can say is, kids, whatever your heart wants to do, follow it, be focused, keep on going after it. I don't care what field of expertise it is. Just keep going for it.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warrior Nation.